and welcome to episode 10 of Enterprise Tech India Unplugged. Today, again, we have with us Kumaran, who is the chief mentor of Tiny Magic. And the topic which we are going to discuss today is IT governance. Now, what is really IT governance? What we will try and talk to you today about is how do you really define it in a way which most enterprise IT professionals will be able to understand. Because what you see, if the moment you open the Wikipedia page for enterprise IT, the first thing which you get under enterprise IT management is IT governance, right? So if you just look at it, says the definition is, it says providing comprehensive service cost, quality, and risk information so that IT investment portfolio is balanced according to business strategy. Now, this is a very big statement. I struggle with it sometimes to even simplify it to people who I talk to. Is what is this IT governance? So, Kumaran, why don't you enlighten us about your view of what this IT governance is all about?
Yeah, thanks, Deepak, for having me on the call. I think it's very scary to begin with, right? It's too complex. It's like the word legal compliance kind of things, strikes a fear in your heart, even with so many years of experience. One of the ways to tackle this is the simple, straightforward approach is let me take some books and go through it and try to implement it word by word or follow it chapter by chapter. And if you take a very formal approach to IT governance, you can have COBIT or ITIL or there are other standards, right? Take each one and I'm going to implement them one by one. But it's like telling people, like, you want to be a citizen of India, read the Constitution of India first. We'll die, right? It's simple. I mean, you want to be a good, somebody asked me, how do I be a good citizen of India? I give him a Constitution of book, this fat book, and they read it, okay? And live according to that, you're a good citizen of India. Never going to go anywhere. Okay.
Yes.
Which is the real challenge that, and interestingly, at least for citizen of India, you have one constitution.
Right.
Here you have some 4 or 5 different standards. So the way I would say to skin that cat is actually look at the spirit behind it, and if you look at it, or the spirit or the intention behind it. So if I take the same analogy of being a good citizen is somebody who, at bare minimal, doesn't harm the country he lives in. One.
Right.
Second, is he helpful to himself and to other co-citizens? Right. That's the 2 spirits. Now, this is very easy to understand. It's not very complicated.
Right.
Okay. So you start from there. So IT governance is what? IT governance is somebody, the business, is giving you money to get some technologies in place to help the business.
Right.
Okay. The money that I am getting in, right? Am I spending it in the right place so that the business is getting the returns for it as well? Is it equitable? Can I even connect it? So the first thing I would kind of start off is, if I am getting X amount of rupees, 10 lakhs, 20 lakhs, okay, can I see how the return of that money is going to go back to the business? I think that would be the starting step.
Right. So this starting step which you said about return to the business, is this what people define as business value? Because I hear this term business value all the time, and it's very difficult to define this term called value, right? And value is it appears like it is a judgment call, right? Whereas in governance, what we say return, right? It has to be very specific kind of return. So, but how is this return and business value really connected in terms of governance? How do you really connect these two?
Actually, that's where it gets interesting. Now, to reach the point which you are telling itself takes 3-4 months for somebody to do it once they have started this journey. And then you hit a point, right? How do I actually measure it? At that point, you start opening up your ITIL or a COBIT book.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
At that point, you open that book. You will find what kind of metrics you could tackle. Then that book will start making sense to you.
Okay.
So So basically there, for example, it would be, to give an example, right? Let's take something as simple as email. Okay. Now you take ITIL or COBIT, people will kind of give you metrics on how effective is your email. That's already done. You get
Right.
information on that. I don't have to reinvent that wheel.
Right. Right.
Okay. Am I doing patching well? Now, how
Right.
does that connect to business? Right. So basically, for example, if I didn't patch properly, if the system is down, okay, how much will be the business downtime be?
Right.
So these frameworks help you define the metrics and do it. But that is after 2, 3, 4 months of starting off on how will I actually be accountable. So you try without any framework. In 2, 3 months, you get a lot of questions in your mind. Then you open a COBIT book or a ITIL book and then say, does this book answer my questions? There's a very good chance that you will get answers for them.
So the interesting word which I heard from you right now is accountability, right? So this governance is it a way for IT to be IT governance? When I say governance here, so IT governance is a way for IT to be held accountable. Is that it would be a right thing to say?
Yeah, it is correct. So I think
Yeah.
it's one way of measuring accountability and also showing accountability and responsibility. So
Okay.
yes,
So how does it? I'm sorry. So how does it relate to this performance management, which is sort of related to governance, but is it really part of governance, or it is a separate thing by itself? When we want to hold IT accountable, do we want it to be, let's say, it's like when you hold a person accountable, he says, this is what I expect you to do, and these are the numbers I'm going to see on your scorecard. And that is basically performance management, right? Is IT governance related to performance management also?
it is. It's probably a stepping stone to performance management. Now,
Okay.
if you aren't measuring something, there is no way to say whether you're doing it well or not.
Okay.
Okay, unless there is an exam, I do not know whether the student is doing well or not well.
Whether the
So
concept is understood or not. Yeah.
concept is understood or not. Now, if I have to conduct an exam, I need to have a curriculum.
Right. Right.
Okay, then I can say the exam is going to be based on this curriculum. Once
Right.
I have a mark, then I have a chance of knowing whether learning is happening. So basically, you need a curriculum. First, you need to have an intention to study. Then you need to have a curriculum, a structure, then a test based on that curriculum. Then the result of that determines how well or bad I am doing. So
Right.
we go through that stage. So becoming the spirit of IT governance is about I have to be accountable. How do I show value? The curriculum is probably it can be no need to reinvent the wheel. Use Corbett or ITIL or any of the structure which is there. Then you start measuring them, and then you sit with the business and say this is good performance and bad performance. So it goes through those steps.
So, so, so since we talk about how the business is getting value about it, how much does business really care about IT governance? How much does the business care, in your view, in your interaction with IT teams? Do you think they have that business perspective, or the business has that IT perspective for them to be able to make an informed understanding of whether this governance do they really care? Means my question really is, do they really care about IT governance?
So
Business.
let me give a very easy analogy so that that would kind of answer the question by itself. I'm a passenger in a bus or in a flight.
Right.
Do I really care what the pilot is doing or how the engine is being loaded? Absolutely not. I think it's the same thing with the business. So it's like for the pilot might be the most talented guy. You would be the greatest .NET coder on the planet.
Right.
Okay, but as a passenger, it is completely irrelevant to me. Did my flight take off on time, land on time? Did it have turbulence or not? Is only my thing. If I didn't have any turbulence, it took off on time, landed on time. That's all I care about.
Right, right.
Whether whether the pilot has 10,000 years flying experience, he optimized fuel by 10%, 20%, none of my problem as a passenger. Same thing with business. Practically, they don't care. It doesn't matter to them.
So let me sort of delve a little deeper into the analogy which you just made. So you said that passenger doesn't care, but really they care, but their parameters of measurement are not the same as what IT measures by, right?
Sure,
So when you
correct.
right, so they care, but how they measure the performance is totally different from how IT measures the performance,
That's true. That's true.
right?
I would actually, yeah, you are more accurate in telling that. How they care or what they look at is very different from how IT looks at it or how a pilot looks at it, how good, efficient he or she is.
So in your view, so because since we mentioned COBIT and ITIL and all these frameworks, uh, do these frameworks actually have that business view, or do means I know they intend to do that, but what are the pitfalls of sort of looking at it from those frameworks perspective? Means because I've seen people become very religious about these frameworks, and they think this is the be all and end all of governance. So what is your view about looking at these frameworks?
It's always tricky. I think it's the same pitfall with any framework or regulations. I think it's important to start with the spirit and keep the spirit in focus and then keep doing it. Otherwise, any rule book, any process can kill us. So, uh, implementing it to the T, is it important? Not as much as living up to the spirit of it. So, yeah,
Uh,
so we have to be
I,
careful.
I think the word which you used initially was the spirit, right? So the spirit is very important um, for any IT organization.
I
So
think I
so
would
in yeah.
just to kind of reiterate and make that simple, right? Is the business smiling because of you? Okay, a
Right,
simple test. An
right.
IT guy walks into a meeting of all the people looking at him and then saying, "Thank you for making our life better." A simple test. That's it, right?
But yeah,
Or if all they can think of is they're very frustrated and they have this one is not there, that one. And I think that is forget ITIL, forget COBBLE, right? You walk
yeah,
into a meeting of all managers of all departments, okay?
right.
And they look at the IT guy and then they have all they can think of is problems that I have to tell him. That means governance is failing.
I think that's a very good simple the thumb rule, I would say, which IT management can actually look at and say, instead of presenting these complicated charts and PowerPoints with incident rates and everything, they should just look at how people are reacting to them when they enter meetings with business, right?
Correct.
And their stakeholders, how do people react? And that should be our barometer for how happy or sad your performance has been, right? So do you have any examples of such things actually happening with people you work with or you have personally? How do you see your own company's IT? How do you see do you see that in the same way as what you just described? Do you see them in the same way? Because you also own that part of it, because I understand you're not a very big setup, but you own all those things. But how do so when you are the user as well as the provider, how do you justify your own performance?
It's interesting. Actually, a couple of weeks back, me and my CEO, we recorded my failures as a CTO. Okay, so it's
Right.
kind of, I don't have a big framework. I don't have a lot of metrics to be measured. But I would say that as an IT, we are doing just about average after
Okay.
5 years, even in a small setup like this.
Right.
And uh, and I guess the measurement criteria in my scenario is if I ask my developer what are the different aspects of my business, right?
Hmm.
They can probably talk about 20-30% of it.
Hmm.
70% of my business, my IT doesn't know,
Right. Right.
even when they are developing an application for that. correct? Now, that is a clear uh, disconnect, because what value it is delivering to my IT, to my end customers, they don't know. That means my governance is bad. They are doing something, right? From their perspective, they are working late, they are working hard. But is it making a difference to the business? They don't know. They don't even know what my business is. Then only they can know whether it is effective or not.
Yes, yes.
So it's like, which is, I guess, is a pretty much a challenge for all around. And as you said, I guess some of these tools get in the way, ironically. So it's like I'm focusing more on, am I taking backups 10 times a day, right? Is I'm going to automate my backup. But okay, I've done all these great backup thing, but my basic users are not even logging into the application. What's the point in optimizing my backup, right?
Right.
Uh, or the other thing is, I've taken a backup, but in order to restore it, it will take me 4 hours. Why? Because I need to get approvals.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a process which I have not worked in. I've got backups, but I can't restore it.
Because the process to approve is too long.
The process to upload it is too long. Okay. So basically, it's something like, if I take a metric on how well my backups are, how well it's updated, it will be green. But when does it really have value? When something goes wrong, you can restore it and get the system up is only when value is delivered. But
Yes.
now that is going to take 4 hours, because I have to get approved from 3 managers, such that I have to overwrite the old data. Is it okay to go back? No, that's a business thing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Now, so the real catch there is, it takes me 4 hours to get the system up again.
Right.
So my
Right.
backup frequency and metrics becomes completely irrelevant from an end business perspective. So that's where the challenge happens. We miss what is really needed.
Right. So I think since you've brought up the backup area for IT operations, uh, a big part of governance, I think, is also risk management, right?
Yes.
Preventing business getting impacted by bad IT failures, right? So how does that play?
So it's let me give a even more clearer example of when I meant that. So this actually happened. So this is like, basically, I have one DB server,
Mhm.
okay, and the backup is done at a server level.
Right.
Okay. Now, what is happening on that same DP server? The finance had three applications. The HR had three applications. Okay. And and within that, then the learning team had three applications. The quality team had four applications. So put together, there were around 40 databases there.
Mhm. Single
Okay.
point of failure.
Yeah, that was one. I mean, the reason
Okay.
is they could afford that. That's
Yeah,
okay. That's not the
that's fine.
problem. Okay,
Yeah.
so then they kind of optimized it to take. So because all the DB sizes were there, then they spent a lot of time optimizing on how to optimally take the backups. Okay. Now the problem has come is that, when what happened is, one DB got corrupted
Mhm.
for some vague reason. Okay, it got corrupted, or some wrong data went in and they had to roll back. Okay, this is one application.
Mhm.
Now if I have to roll that back, the way they had structured it, they had to restore the entire server.
Entire server. Yes, yes.
Okay,
It's
now it's a classical case of operation success, patient dead. I took perfect backups. Now
yes.
they had to get
Nobody
approval
thought about
from.
restoration scenario.
Exactly. Now they had they'd start of restoration scenario, but the problem is, they didn't think of restoring just one application in a point of time.
Right, right,
They
right.
could restore the whole thing. If the server had completely crashed, then they would have been good.
Yeah.
But the case is, there's just one application which got corrupted. So now they had to get approval from 20 different stakeholders on
Yeah, because
how.
they'll restore the whole database, right? Or
Yeah.
restore it in a parallel server and then only get that data out and then restore it. That is a whole new
Yeah,
hassle.
so if they had to restore it in a parallel server, will that server be compromised? This is production data. Who will
Right,
have access to that? Again, it becomes a governance thing,
right,
right? The risk kind of involves if I go outside this server.
right,
So that is what I'm talking about, is that when you look at a metric at a very specific level, it becomes a problem. But now if you look at it, why am I going to take backup?
hmm,
That will kind of help us answer those questions better. And obviously, when the risk is a key element here, right? The risk for the business,
right.
and that is what slows it down.
So I think two things which I got of it. One is that IT needs to understand why business needs a particular service, right? They need to really understand, because unless they understand that, they cannot do the second part, which is mitigate that risk with making a operations scenario for it, right? The example which you gave is restoring data for just one application. So
Right.
that, because the database guys or the IT operations guys have no concept, they were not really involved. Also, the application guys never told the operations guys why they need this backup and what scenario they will need to restore it in. So there is a communication gap between, maybe the application guys understood it, right, that this is important data, it needs to be restored, and they probably have a procedure for it, but they never told the operations guy that this is a risk which you need to give us for, right? So I think that risk management is one of the key parts of governance which you just mentioned. Uh, and I think some of these things also come by experience, right? Some of these things come by experience of doing these things, how people actually go about doing their IT, and then they start creating processes without. But still, there is that big missing piece which you highlighted, which is people just don't understand the business part of it. Why does, because some manual says you have to take backup, and the framework says you must have backup for all servers, we are going to implement backup, but they do not make that connection between making that backup and restoring it, and talking to the applications guys as to why they would need that backup, and is the recovery really in line with what business needs. So that's, I think, I guess that is one important thing from governance perspective, which enterprise IT should think about, rather than just think about following the framework. This is, if you're going to apply certain metrics, if you're going to create some procedures, think about how that scenario will actually help the business or help the application to recover from a bad situation, right? So people don't spend enough time thinking about those scenarios, and that's, so in fact that's what my approach is to anybody to start thinking about governance is, think about your business scenarios, right? You think about why a particular service is needed, think about what you will do to manage the risk to that service, right? And that is what should drive governance over and above what your framework tells you. Frameworks, in fact, actually try to tell you this thing, but since they are driven by a particular structure of the text, and they have to make it into a sort of an academic exercise, which sometimes does not translate well uh, when taken to practice, right? Although all frameworks will claim that they are based on practices, right? But what happens, what I've seen is, the moment you put that practice into a document, it becomes obsolete immediately,
Yeah.
right? Right. So the practice really should be practiced, right? And there it should be. It should be not be just a framework which sits in somebody's, what I call as shelfware, right? So you create this document and have this standing, this governance procedures created, and put it into a shelf, which you bring it out and dust it when some auditor shows up,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So So I think that is the approach which we probably should be warned against. That if you make your governance targeted towards auditors, that is the wrong approach to governance, right? Right. So that's I think. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I think that's what you said is perfect. I think talk to the business guys, okay, and kind of if you can tell them in 5 minutes what your IT governance, how do you actually do governance? You can actually do it in 5 minutes. I think that should be a broad thumb rule. Can the business understand it? So going back, let's close with our passenger analogy, right? The pilot comes and says, "Are you happy with us taking on off on time? Do you think we met your expectation? Okay, or did you have any problem during the flight?"
All right.
Two simple questions, and you get if you get, "I have no problems, I'm happy with you," then I think we're getting a IT governance right.
All right. All right. So is there any? I know I'm springing it on you, but is there any book recommendation which you want to make for today's episode, or we want to leave it to the next episode?
I haven't quite talk about it, but then I guess now that you have asked, I think measure. There was a site about OKRs. I think that's a
Right.
good
Right. So measure what
list.
matters. Right. Measure
Measure
what
what.
matters. That's the book. Yes. Right.
Yes.
That's the
So
book.
I
Yes.
think that's the one that pops up to my mind when you kind of think of this. It's not directly related to IT governance, but if I have to mentally, that's the one that pops up in my.
Right. I think yeah that's a really good book, and then I have read it, and the way OKRs are also a kind of governance,
Yes.
but it is not the kind of governance which frameworks talk about. This is more about day to day managing your output, right? Governing how well you can perform. But I don't see why you cannot use OKRs as a way to govern your improvement, right? So that's the way I look at it. So there you have it. So we just off the cuff, I really thank Kumaran to come up with this book recommendation off the cuff and make that connection immediately to the topic of the day. Thank you, Kumaran,
Thanks.
and we'll see you next time with another topic of interest. Please do give us your feedback and subscribe to our channel. We are on YouTube, we are on Spotify, we are on Podomatic. We can listen to us in audio, video, the way you like to enjoy the topics. Of course, we recommend the audio version because we are not great looking people. So I'm just saying on my behalf, not Kumaran, but so we really recommend the audio version because you can listen it at leisure while you're doing your exercise, you're walking around, or uh, just driving to work. You can enjoy these short discussions, and do leave us your feedback on our LinkedIn page or our Facebook page. You can go visit our site, which is etiunplugged.in or .com. Also, it will redirect to the same place. Thank you, and see you next time.